Hi, Krish. Hi, Amana. So nice to see you here.
Nice to see you also.
Thank you so much for accepting to do this interview together. The theme of today for the people that are listening to us is very close to my heart, and I'm sure also probably very close to your heart. And it is about how to create an intimate, conscious relationship. And before we go into the theme, I would love to introduce you both for the people who don't know you. So, Krish and Amana, you've been in a love relationship for many years, yeah? I don't know, 30 around, right?
Yes, more than 30 now, yes.
Wow, yeah. And you also been teaching together for another about 30 years as well.
Yes.
And you teach people how to love and how to live a more creative and loving life, and to really connect within as well. You do a lot of seminars for people who want to develop this for themselves, for their own lives, but also you train people who at the same time teach and pass on your own work under the Learning Love Institute method, which is a method you've created based on your own relationship and your experience working with people. And you have written also 8 books together, which are amazing, I have to say. From the first one, Face to Face with Fear, from Codependency to Freedom, which is very popular here in Spain, to the last one, The Flow of Love, which I really love and really resonates within me. And I hear there's one more coming. So I'm also looking forward to that. And I wonder whether you would like to add something to what I've said about you and your work.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we work in a soft way to help people love themselves and learn how to share their love. You know, we teach a somewhat radical form of relationship, which we'll talk about, in the sense that we don't like people to have expectations on each other, just to live in freedom, but also in a lot of respect and empathy for each other. So, yeah.
So I really appreciate your passion, your passion for truth and also for this work and your own work. So I really appreciate very much. And you're right that it is really coming from a lot of passion inside to help bring in a little bit more consciousness to people's lives, whether it's in relating, which of course is a very important aspect of life, but also other areas of life. Yeah.
So it fits with your work, which is about conscious sexuality.
Yeah, amazing. And it's true, it's a really deep calling within myself. Whenever I have challenges in my business, then I ask myself why. Why am I doing this? And then I realized, I could call it something else. I could do it, hide it in a different way, but I will be doing the same. Yeah. So yeah, right now, I don't know whether it will change in the future. There is a deep calling in my heart to be offering this, also to continue to grow myself in this, in my own relationship with myself, in my own love towards myself, and to open into to more love in my life. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is such an important aspect also as sharing any kind of work, that it's really about this deeper also learning and growing and maturing as we're doing this, which is becomes like a fun dance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna introduce myself also a little bit. So my main focus or my mission is to really help both men and women to connect more with themselves, with their body, with their sexuality, and with the love within, and so they can really create more healthy, conscious relationships and live a more fulfilling life. That's my passion. and they're everything that I do, and that they can connect, especially also to the love within, to the bigger love. Because I think without that, everything is a little bit empty and meaningless. And yeah, it will create a lot of dependency. So this is my passion, and all the work I do is in a way or another related to that. So, and that brings us to the theme of today, but which is really how to create an intimate, conscious relationship. And before we go into that, because I think your own lives and your own story is probably one of the most inspiring examples I have of this, I would like to ask you first a little bit about your own story, your own love relationship. And I have first a question for Krish. I heard you say a few times that until you met Amana, you didn't manage to really create a relationship, a love relationship that really worked. So I'm wondering, what is the difference? What happened with Amana that didn't happen before?
Well, I could say that Amana is perfect, so that helps. I mean, I think it also is maturity on both parts, you know.
Hmm.
I had reached a certain level of seeing my patterns and you know, and being able to be mature enough to be in a relationship. But and Amana's very mature and yeah, my mama said that I just got lucky, but I told her that I think it's just luck.
Yeah, I think this is I like what you said about the level of maturity, yeah, because otherwise we feel that there is, you know, we need to be waiting until the right person will come that is going to be easy, that there's not going to be any activation. And I feel there is a little bit in the unconscious mind a dream, like a childish dream, that one day someone will appear and there won't be any difficulties. Yeah. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could say a little later what we mean by maturity. But I think that it's not, you know, it's about not expecting the other person to save you and not expecting that you're going to get everything, you know, that you just have to be your own person and someone you share without controlling or possessing each other, you know.
And maybe I'll just also add that, you know, this thing you said about finding, you know, magically finding some person, you know, if you, I think in a way it's the opposite. Like when you find someone where it's like there's a real deep soul connection, then it's also all the deep wounds that will get triggered. So then it's working through that. And we did that the first years, you know, so I would say like the first 4 years, maybe 4 or 5 years, it was a process, you know, and I think that is natural, that when you really find someone and there is that willingness to keep looking at yourself and take responsibility, you can work through these very deep wounds that you otherwise can't really work through unless you in there, you know, unless you hang in there when it's difficult. But it does take that willingness to keep coming back and owning, and that's not always easy, because it's easy to blame the other, to see the fault in the other. It's not always so easy to see ourselves and what it is that we need to find space to be with and to recognize, which has a lot to do with loving who we are as people, as beings, and recognizing that we're individuals. We're so unique, all of us, you know, to bring a deeper kind of love and acceptance to who we are and what we bring. That makes it much easier to be with the other. Because if we're judging ourselves, thinking that we have to change, or we lose ourselves, all of that stuff, or going out there to get approval, and all of these things make it very complicated to be together. You know?
So I wonder, what are some of the main challenges or difficulties that you have to go through and what were the growth steps for each of you? Because I guess the difficulties would have been different for each of you. So I wonder whether you each want to share a little bit of some of the key challenges.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that one thing, we talk about two life lessons in relationship. One is that you find space that when you're getting triggered and when something that you expect isn't being met, that you have to learn to find the space inside to be with yourself and to see how it's more a reflection of you rather than the other person's fault. So I'd say that that's one of the life lessons. So when you get triggered, it's like the automatic thing that a lot of people do is they find fault in the other or they blame the other. But we teach the opposite, which is not to find fault in yourself, but to go inside and see what particular wound is being triggered. You know, you might feel insecure, you might feel you're not getting as much sex as you want, or and so on. So those, you know, the other thing is that the other life lesson has to do with holding on to yourself and not losing your own structure, not losing yourself in the other, being willing to be transparent, but also not feeling overwhelmed with shame, but living, you know, be solid in yourself. And so that's the other thing that we feel is so very important, you know, because people are not solid in themselves. They can easily get lost in the other or control the other, all the power games and dramas, you know, that can, you know.
I mean, to say there's so many, you know, it's was a long time ago that we worked through these bigger wounds. But what I can say, what for me has been challenging, and maybe not so much anymore, but it's easier. But one thing is, for instance, to honor my own sense of time and rhythm, and not let myself be rushed, or to not be, you know, like to because there is this natural tendency to meld and merge. So to kind of honor that about certain things, I'm slower, you know, like to honor that has been a process for me, for instance, you know, and also something very simple, like the way we approach like life or practical things are very, very different, you know. So it has been a big kind of journey for me to recognize that there's another way than mine. No, no, but what I mean is like to really recognize that another person can feel and experience life so differently. And that's a beautiful contribution and richness, but it can also be challenging. Like, for instance, around practical things, I'm much more like detail-oriented, pragmatic, practical, like simple, you know, and can quickly know how to approach things, right? And Krish is just very different. So it's taken a lot of, for me, a lot of learning to recognize and also learn that, let's say, for instance, he might forget things or whatever, not to take it personally.
What?
Not to take it as if he's doing something, you know. So little things like this, you know, to recognize that if things happen, that is nothing personal, and realize that it's just a different style.
For example, one time I threw her favorite sweater in the washing machine on the wrong cycle. I was on my way to play tennis. I was in a hurry, but I wanted to be the nice boyfriend or husband and do something. So I threw everything in, and that was a big mistake. We've recovered from that one.
We have recovered. But, you know, little things like this over the years, learned, you know, to see that, you know, it's nothing personal, and we just have different ways and different styles. And, you know, that's a big thing to learn to love, you know. Yeah.
I spilled a blueberry smoothie on the carpet, and as a result, we had to get wood floors. Things like
all an excuse to change.
an excuse to get wood floors, which we need. Anyway, yeah, we're different. We're really different.
And to understand that, like, his sense of space and like around, like, you know, it's just different, you know. So to understand that, yeah. And also for me to understand that, for instance, you know, we do have a lot of you know, our lives are busy and we do take care of a lot of things. So for me to understand that practical details can sometimes overwhelm Krish, and for me to understand that and just kind of find a way, you know. So yeah, little details like that, you know.
So there's a lot of understanding of the differences and
Of the
respect and
differences,
acceptance, yeah.
respect. Yes, that's right.
And to find a way that you can really still go together with these
Yes,
different
yes.
rhythms.
And also, I think for me, one of the biggest things I would say, I mean, that this, of course, is a very long time ago now, because we did meet, you know, more than 30 years ago, but is that never before in any deep connection had I ever really worked through the deepest wounds. Like other connections, I was able to work through some things, but not in this way. So that when the deepest mistrust came up, I would always leave. Like there was never, you know, enough space inside of me to recognize that it was my mistrust, you know. So I would leave, and there was not enough trust in the connection to work it through. And there was not enough understanding in the connection to work it through. And that is, I would say, the main difference in our relationship is that we have been able to hang in there, even when the biggest, like for me, it's more like when the biggest mistrust happens. It's such a deep, deep closing that happened. Like it's, for me, it's more like a shutdown that used to happen. And for me not to believe that, but to be able to watch it and hang in there and feel the pain underneath the shutdown, feel the pain underneath the closed heart, you know, pain of shutting out the other because of my mistrust, you know, and to work through that has been one of the biggest things for me.
Wow. Yeah, just to think of the possibility of really going through my deepest wounds with someone is like, oh, as you talk about it, is like, wow, the amount of trust that and connection and that is required to really go to the deepest level.
Yeah, and inner spaciousness, like inner space to be able to hang in the moments, you know, when there's no connection, to not too quickly start to build a bridge, to just feel it, hang in that aloneness inside, you know, which is so essential for everybody, but particularly in a relationship, to find our own grounding, our own rootedness, so that we have space to be when there's conflict, when there's misunderstandings, you know.
Yeah, to be able to be with yourself, with your own pain and fear and yeah. And what did you get support? I wonder.
Excuse me. Oh,
Actually, no.
not really.
Wow.
No, not really.
I mean,
not
we
really.
met in an ashram, you know, we met in a meditation community. So we were meditating, and I think we had a lot of knowledge about the process. You know, I studied a lot of it in my own training, but I think we just also one thing that really we adjusted was our sexuality, because from very early we took a course. We did take a course actually in sexuality, which was no longer focused on orgasm, more connecting. So that became, and then also years later, Amana's sexuality changed. She became even more meditative or calm, and I had to adjust because I'm, you know, a guy with a lot of energy, and so we've adjusted. You know, we've adjusted because it's really about being loving with each other, you know. So we've always found a way to make love in a way that works for both of us. But it's taken some adjustment, you know, over the years.
Yeah.
So, and then
Yeah, we did. It's true. In the very first months about togetherness, we did this, I think 1 or 2, maybe 2 week
2-week course.
Yeah, which
In
was
India, actually.
you know, the slow sex method, you know, that from very long, you know, the coming inside, plug in, and no excitement, and you know, no no emphasis on orgasm and all of that. And we actually did that just like a couple of months after we got together. So that was also kind of, that created a, you know, very much a foundation.
And 2 days in the same robe.
Yeah, part of the process.
Ah, yes.
You know, the tantra robe, you know, where
Yes,
you are
yes, I know.
like a big robe, like a big bag, and you're inside, and only one arm is out from one side, and the other person has the arm, and you have to be inside that for 2 days, you know.
That was,
I know, I know, I know. And you
Yeah.
survived, so
I survived.
Even if I'm eating slower, walking slower.
Yeah. Oh my God. I was for other things, she was still eating. Yeah.
Yes.
And in which way has the relationship helped you to love yourself more? Do you think it has helped you with that?
I would say that being in a relationship like this one is an amazing teacher. You know,
Mm,
learning to be more empathic, learning. She's had some health issues over the years that, you know, have been challenging for me. Also, as a doctor, I can always imagine the worst. So she's had, you know, some hip replacements. And so there's a lot of maturity actually in going through difficult times together. That's part of it. And yeah, and learning to feel each other. It's almost like whatever she's feeling, it's like there's no big difference. I always know what she's feeling, you know. So it's like I think Osho once described that when there's a relationship, there's two people, but then there's a third thing, which is the togetherness, which is almost like it's a whole nother reality, and that's very real for us. The you know.
And
So,
it's yeah, it's like yeah, it's really like something, I would say more like an enrichment, I would say, you know, the enrichment of being together. It adds another dimension. But in terms of how it has helped to love ourselves more, I guess through all the different challenges, you know, it's like a growth into loving and accepting more, you know, how I am inside. I mean, also I would say, you know, a big, huge piece of my growth has been also the working together, because, you know, I kind of in a way came to it a little bit reluctantly. So it kind of just happened. It wasn't really my choice. And I didn't really feel inside any kind of pull to be a therapist or to be a teacher. It was never really something I was so interested in, but it just kind of happened. And I was invited to do it, and then it kind of just happened in the commune where we were staying. And then I felt inside doing it, I felt, oh, this is actually an interesting growth opportunity for me to be in front of people and in that position, because actually it's a little bit against my nature in a certain way. Like I like being alone, I like being in nature. I'm a bit more introvert, so, and I like one-on-one connections. And so it has taken me a long time to feel comfortable in front of groups and bigger groups. And we had to work through a lot of shame, you know, a lot of insecurity, many years, and feeling, oh, why am I doing this? Do I really want to do this? And then, but inside, in my heart, I just knew this is right. Like this is my growth, you know. And yeah, so that's been a lot of my growth. I mean, and now it's different, and I don't have that same. But you know, it's yeah.
she's really good. She's really, really good. As a matter of
She's,
fact,
she's amazing, I have to say.
she had recently she had an astrology reading where the guy said that she was destined to be a world teacher. So I call her Krishnamurti Amana now. Oh, she's amazing. And I can't even imagine, except for the men's group that we do, you know, that I do with you, I know, and also online. Can't imagine anymore working without her because it wouldn't be the same. You know, a long time ago, I did some stuff alone, but I wouldn't do it without her. So, you
I
know,
remember when we had the men's group last year here in Spain, at the end of the group, Krish, you said to the men, and if you like this, wait until you see me working with Amana. like that is another level, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, wow.
So
No, that's great, you know, and she touches people because she's very feminine and she's very soft and people feel the energy. So, you know, yeah.
And I have to say, what is also very beautiful is to really see you both working together in the sense of how you each bring a different quality, and at the same time, it just flows so beautiful. Yeah, it's like, wow. It feels that it's prepared, and I know it's not prepared because it's impossible that you could prepare all these things that you both say, yeah. But yeah, beautiful, very inspiring to see from outside, yeah, for myself. Very inspiring.
I mean, that actually also has been a growth. You know, one aspect, of course, is, me, recognizing and moving through, having the courage to do this. But then other growth has been like the working together, because it's quite an art to how to feel each other, feel yourself, and how to not like negate the other. Let's say, it's one direction and you feel no, it's a different, how to add the and instead of going no. Like how just to add
The
another color.
but, yeah.
Not but like how to go from the and just kind of add another dimension and make it richer rather than more narrow and go with the no, So that's a big thing of how to dance, I guess everybody learns working together,
Yeah, we've learned over the years.
Yeah.
You know, we've been doing it so long.
Great.
Yeah.
She's never said anything that I didn't really agree with. So I totally trust whatever she says, because she's smart and she comes from a very deep place. So I just, if I didn't trust, then it would be different, or if she didn't trust me. So we trust each other. And, we want to make it safe for people. That's important, We want to make it safe where people feel, because, each of us have experienced therapists in the past that weren't so careful to create space and safety. That's pretty important, especially since so much now is about the nervous system and about, calming and creating quality of calmness and yeah.
And also that being said, of course, we can do our best, but things happen, and sometimes things, also painful things happen, people get triggered, and that's just how it is. And sometimes there's trust to work through that, and sometimes there isn't, But at least from our side, we're very aware of the vulnerability someone is in to be in a seminar or training, or to open up to other people. It's very vulnerable.
I think both ways, yeah, for you, for you and for the people, yeah. I think there is vulnerability in both, yeah, positions, yeah.
Exactly.
Mm.
And that as a facilitator, because
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Yes, exactly.
I'm saying I also enjoyed it a lot, but there are moments where I feel like, oh, what am I doing here? Yeah. And after 30 years or whatever, a little bit more that you've been together, how does the relationship stays alive? What keeps it alive?
We travel a lot.
Doing fun things together helps, like prioritizing, also taking time off, and I mean, just finding things together that we both enjoy, like, which for us is very much nature. We love hiking, being in nature, being in beautiful places, and enjoying just having time. That's, I think, very important. And it's true, we do travel because also we have seminars and trainings, and then in between, we're very careful not to work too much and not to have too many things right after the other, but to create space. So we also have time just to relax and be together. That's really important.
We have a lot of common interests, we seem to like the same things. We eat the same kind of food. We're both very focused on our bodies and being healthy and
meditation,
exercise and meditation.
So we have a lot in
there's a lot of fits.
common ground, you know. We both enjoy,
Which is something that we also teach, that there has to be a fit. You know, there has to be a certain common ground for two people to share a life together. You know, it doesn't, for sure, doesn't mean everything, for sure, but about the basics, you know.
Like, so similar priorities. So as an example, you know, for me, it was very, very clear very early that I did not want to have children, you know. So I already decided, you know, actually before I met Krish, I even, you know, decided and even made an operation. But it was very, very clear for me that this is not for me to be a mother, at least not now and ever in this lifetime. It doesn't feel like, you know. So, and then when we met 2 years later, you know, that was just also a synchronicity. But that's one thing that with couples, I see a lot with the couples I work. That they come together not being so conscious about that decision. And that's a major life choice. Could be very beautiful to choose to have children and beautiful not to. But very often the choice is not so conscious. And often it's not in synchronicity. Or maybe one or the other, they're not so clear about it, you know? And then time passes, and then there's the urgency, and the biological clock is ticking, and that creates a lot of difficulties, you know.
Also, I think that a lot of people come together ruled still by their conditioning. In other words, they're not really conscious of what they're choosing. They're still living the life that was programmed for them to live. So, you know, what often happens is the couple, if one or both, well, it's better if both, start working on themselves, then there's trouble, because they can break away from all the family rules and want to live an authentic life, but the other person still wants to live a conventional life, and that's going to be a problem. So one of the things that we teach is that to live a life that's true for you, and that could mean the end of a relationship, you know, even if it means breaking up a family, which, oh boy, we've seen a lot, because that happens. If both people don't embrace the same path of living an unconventional, authentic life, then they can't be together, you know, it doesn't work.
And then the thing also is, you know, I actually think the deepest thing of why it works is that we're both taking deeper responsibility for our energy. So it's like continuous growth, you know, over the years. And I see that often in couples where there's some kind of, I don't know, some kind of a sleepiness that tends to happen sometimes when people come together and they forget about their own flowering, own expansion, their own taking risks in their life, whether it's professionally or, you know, with themselves, loving themselves more, or like with friends or with hobbies, you know, and losing a lot of energy and then going into like tiredness, depression. And it's actually not so much of a relationship issue. It's just that the person has lost themselves. You know, and then it's not fun to be together, and then like it's not fun to be with somebody who's not really connected and enjoying life, and you know.
Also, how to regulate. You know, a lot of people think that they have to, when they get upset, that they need the other person to regulate them. And so one of the things that we teach is self-regulation, which is really important. It's like, don't depend on the other person to deal when you get anxious, you know, when your nervous system gets activated. So learning, and that's where kind of, you know, what we call emotional vipassana, learning how to be with yourself even when there's discomfort, and not run to either the other person or an addiction, which is what people have to deal with, you know. Also sexual addiction, which is, you know, using sex to regulate, which is tricky, you know, tricky. So things like that.
This is so essential, you know, like that comes back to that deeper, you know, responsibility for our energy. So when we're disturbed, to just be with that, take a walk, breathe into it, let it settle, so that when we can come to the other, we're not coming to take anything, you know, we're really coming to share. We could share what's difficult, what's painful, but not for the other person to make us
Not
feel better. That's
pulling on
different.
the other
You
person,
know,
yeah.
if we energetically somehow, if we reject what we're going through, we're judging it, and we want the other person to make us feel better, that's a strain on the relationship, you know?
Mm.
And
This is very important, and I think this is not so common in relationship, because there is this thing of going to the other constantly for when there are any difficulties. Yeah.
And a lot of people
Yeah.
really think
Yeah.
that that's expected. In other words, that the other person should, you know, should regulate me. And
Yeah, or even should share. Like I have a lot of clients
Right.
where there's this idea with couples where that often it's the woman who wants the man to share more, and he's like, no, no more pressure, you know. But it's just, and often the woman wants to share, not really that she wants to share, she just wants to feel better because she doesn't feel good inside. So that's, you know, not the time to share. If you don't feel well, if you're not connected, if you're going through something, go to the trees, go to the ocean, take a walk, go to the gym, like go bicycling, whatever, like, or dance, or just be with it, or feel the pain, you know, whatever it is for you, like just be with it, go in. And then you can come to the other and you can share what happened, you know, this and this happened, and I'm going through this, and it's my stuff, and I just want to share like a friend, you know.
yeah.
But after having taken responsibility and regulate, rather than looking for the other to save us all the time. Yeah.
Of course, you can also, let's say you're really going through it and you're taking responsibility, you could ask the other person for something specific, like I'm feeling really insecure right now. Would it be okay just to hold me? Something very specific that the other person can then say yes or no to. You're not expecting it, you're asking, and you give the other person freedom if they have space or not, knowing that if you get a no, you can be with that, you know?
The other thing is that people are very scared of intimacy. Maybe men more than women, but I think that it's pretty universal. People are scared of intimacy because they think they're afraid that they're going to lose themselves, or they're afraid they'll get judged, or they're afraid they're going to get invaded, you know, or afraid they're going to get abandoned. There's so many fears, and people don't face those fears. Honestly, they just either avoid or cling. These are the two, you know, two biggest dysfunctions. Either avoid or cling, and that both of those are defenses against the fears. So you're going to get triggered, you know, and just to find a way to recognize your own sort of habitual and very instinctual fears of pulling away, you know, and just to recognize that, you know.
And sometimes also the, you know, the fear is actually from self-imposed ideas about how you should be in relationship. So it's not necessarily that the other person is putting pressure or anything, but if you have this idea inside, oh, I should be like this, I should be like that, and then of course you don't want to come close because it feels like I'm being imprisoned. I don't want to be a slave. I don't want to be in prison. But you may be doing this whole movie yourself, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, and this is very interesting. When I was reading today a little bit of what you have in your homepage, I think you have something like the art of creating deep, committed, sustained intimacy. And I was like, wow. This is so far away from the tendency right now where relating has become very superficial, and commitment is like it's not in fashion at all. And sustain and commitment go quite well together. Yeah. And I was like, wow. And this is very much related, I feel, to what you just said, the fear of intimacy, yeah, and what is involved in when we come together.
I think that we can't really have commitment unless we let go of expectations. Because if we bring commitment and expectations together, it creates prison for both. Actually. So the idea of commitment is tricky because a lot of people bring together this idea. I just had a session with someone who her idea of commitment was full of expectations on the other person. So they both have to go together. And the other thing is about this whole thing of being sexually exclusive. I mean, this is something we deal with all the time. We don't have a judgment or a morality about it at all. But we do say that if you're really going to open on a deep level, it may not be possible if there's sexual, if there's many partners. But again, people have to decide that for themselves,
And everybody's is different.
Everybody's different,
But I think there is this tendency to think that commitment somehow means losing freedom. Or there's this kind of idea that if I commit, then I'm like obliged to take care of all the other person's expectations, And if you have this idea that you have to fulfill the other person's expectations, of course you don't want to commit, right? Because that's just horrible. So it's a big thing how to to understand that, I mean, even commitment, I think in a way is a kind of I don't know, it's easy to make it something like a thing outside of the actual happening, because it's just a natural happening. Like, for instance, as an example, when we came together, we never talked about like commitment, or we never talked about sexual exclusivity. It just was what we wanted, you know what I mean? So it was a happening. It wasn't like we decided it. Because I see very often couples or one partner wants to hold on to this idea of like, let's close the relationship, just us, and then hold on to an idea. But it's an idea. It's not a natural growth together, just like a tree needs to grow and have deep roots. You can't just say, okay, now let's dig a huge root. I mean, it doesn't happen like this. It's a growth, And it's a lot about trusting in the development of that, and in the process being with your abandonment, being with your emptiness, your loneliness, not grabbing for commitment. Even this idea of marriage as as some people, I don't know if it's just here in the US, there's this idea, to get married. It's, I never understand I mean, why is it different when you're together, if you're married or not? I mean, you might choose to get married. I mean, we chose also because it's much more practical when you're living I'm from Denmark originally. So when you live in a country that's not your own, it's better. But besides that, it could be beautiful as a way to have a big celebration and say yes to each other, but not to cover the fear of the aloneness. Because as we open deeper to someone, we're really going to face our aloneness, more than when you're alone and you don't have a partner. You're really facing your abandonment all the time. There's a misunderstanding, when you don't feel felt, when all those moments we're hanging in just being, which is also very beautiful.
We talk a lot about something called love hunger. So love hunger is the part of us that has tremendous hunger, longing to be loved. And that comes out in many different ways. But a lot of that doesn't really wake up until somebody becomes significant to you. Almost like it's kind of sleeping. It's there because people feel lonely when they don't have a companion. But that's not quite the same. Because as soon as there's somebody in their life, it's like
all the hunger,
all this comes up, and then we have to look at it,
all the longing to get all these needs met that were not met as a child. And it's very deep, and very unconscious. And the other person, will start to feel it as a burden.
So that neediness has to be explored. We also have to explore our insecurities, our shame, because that's going to come up all the time, not just in sexuality, but it comes up. And so the second thing, not only do we have to deal with our neediness and our fears of loss, but we also have to deal with all that insecurity inside of us that also comes up if somebody becomes really, really important to us, insecurity. Why does this person love me? It's hard. The ego can't get that. Love is such a mystery. And so, the ego doesn't get that I'm loved because I'm this and that. It's all nonsense, So to be willing to feel that shame, that insecurity inside. So that's another teacher of religion, to have to
And
fix.
and unless you're conscious of these things, yeah, we come to a relationship thinking that we're gonna feel better, that it's gonna make us happier, and then it might happen for a little while that it's like that, but then before or later it's like the opposite way around.
Yes, that's right. And that's why it's so important that each of us finds the source of joy inside of us, our own connectedness to life, to being. You cannot get that from anybody on the outside, you
Yeah.
know?
I remember once I was with a man that I felt he was so happy and so connected to love himself. And I realized when I met him, I was like, here there is a possibility. Here there is a possibility of a real relationship, because he doesn't need me to be happy, or he doesn't need me for love. He doesn't. And I was like, I can rest in this relating with him. Yeah. Hmm.
But it's tricky if somebody hasn't really worked with their shame yet, because often we cover shame with this need to be needed.
Mm.
So then it's like, if you need me and then you can't leave me, and then, then I have value if you need me. And so it's a big, huge freedom to come to that place to really enjoy being together from joy and abundance and not need.
Mm. Mm. So I'm going back to a little bit to the theme of which is creating a conscious, intimate relationship. What would make it what makes it conscious? I think we said already quite a few things, but if we wanted to summarize, what is conscious of what? What makes it relating? Yeah. Hmm.
We talk about two different movies. There's the movie of what we call an energy event, which is a very nice sexual, if it's sexual relationship, romantic thing. There's an energy event, which can be great, but that's not the same as a deep intimacy or deep relationship. That's a whole nother movie, a whole nother thing. So as we said, I think people have to decide, first of all, what do they want? And second of all, if they decide to pick the second movie, they have to know that that is going to be a huge challenge. They have to be ready to learn, to get the tools, the understanding, the consciousness to take that journey. And a lot of people go blind into this. They don't realize what everybody wants a relationship, everybody wants a partner, but it's a conscious choice instead of just something that you just fall into,
And I would say that what makes a relationship conscious is the focus on what's happening inside you. Because it's very easy in unconsciousness only to look at the other person. So what makes it conscious is that we're observing, we're watching, we're like being curious at what's coming up inside, and willing to feel maybe uncomfortable feelings that might come up. So that changes everything. And so understanding that you're not responsible for the other person's feelings. That's a big one to get. The hugest one to get, that you're not responsible. You can feel their pain, but you don't have to take it away. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to change yourself. You can just be there.
Also, one thing that people don't realize is that their childhood story is going to come up, because whatever trauma or wounding or neglect or invasion they experienced as a child may show itself in some way in the relationship today. So they need to know a little bit about their own narrative, because it's going to show itself. And if they don't have an understanding for how it gets repeated, they could fall into drama, you know.
And yeah, and then it's very much like when that gets triggered, it's like really believing in the drama, in the mistrust, in having to defend yourself. And so as it becomes more conscious, as the consciousness starts to wake up, it's almost like in the beginning, you see almost like two movies. So you see like the one from the past, and you can see the reality of the situation now. And then as you work deeper, the one from the past slowly starts to fade more and more away and becomes more like an echo from the past. And you may still feel the vibrations of the echo, but it's not running your life. You're not making decisions from that. You're not believing your fear, your anger, your mistrust, all of that blindly.
Also,
No?
when people are either not in a relationship or having difficulty creating one, or they're in a relationship and they're having problems, we need to go back to mama and papa or something in their childhood. And a lot of people will say, no, I've already worked through all that. I don't need to look at that anymore. And we go, yeah, but maybe there's some things to look at, you know. Sometimes they create unavailable people in their looking for men or for women, you know, and we need to look at what's going on. What is the mindset or the fears that are causing that? You know, a lot of people say, I just can't seem to find the right person, and that is actually a wrong statement.
And also, it's not always so easy to recognize that when we're attracted to people who are not available, that it's coming from our shame.
Yeah.
You know, our deep unworthiness, this feeling that I don't deserve to have someone who's really there for me, you know. So that's not easy to see, because somebody might say, no, but I don't have shame, I don't have insecurity, but this keeps happening. So the outside is reflecting something that may be just very unconscious.
So,
Yeah.
if people really want to be in a deep intimacy and deep relationship, they have to look at their own psychology. They have to look at their own programming and how they were affected, because it's very deep stuff, you know. It doesn't have to run our life, that for sure, but it's going to run our life unless we look at it, you know.
Unconsciously, yes.
Right. So that's why, we're not so much interested in the past in our work, but only if it's not the past yet. If it's still here, if it's still in the present moment, then we have to look at it. Yeah.
Some people have unfortunately, no experience in the lives of a healthy relationship, but the opposite round, sometimes really toxic, and or just relationships that have led to a lot of suffering. And many people, I find, they say, I'm giving up. I'm ready to give up. Maybe I'm gonna give it to this program the last opportunity, or even not. Like, this is it. Yeah, no. What would you say to these people when they're losing hope, or because they haven't had any experiences that prove that it's possible to create a relationship that is worth living? Yeah.
I would say to forget about the result. Forget about looking for a relationship. Just stay focused on you and keep opening, keep loving, and keep going deeper. But forget about this idea. Like, take it more as a growth journey. So it sounds like, even in the question, that there's some idea that it should last. I mean, who says it has to last, right? Love is not true only because it lasts. I mean, like, everything is very alive and organic. So I would just forget about the results. Just experience. What's the experience if you don't open? What's life like when you don't open, when you don't let somebody in? See what's true. And it might be you're going to get hurt again, but so what? That's
Also,
part
I
of
think
life,
people have to look at the vibration they're sending out. See, a lot of times, one of the things we can do in workshops that's harder in individual work is to give people a sense for how somebody that they might be attracted to, what is the vibration that they have? Because a lot of times they'll send out a shame vibration, like I'm not worthy of love, and that, or sometimes they'll send out an expectation vibration, which scares people away, or sometimes they'll send out a closed vibration, which also pushes people. So there's a lot of dynamics going on there in the vibration that people are not aware of.
But I would also say, if somebody has given up, I hear it more as not being confident that they can be with pain. So I would work with that, because it's more about this deeper confidence that, okay, I open and I might get hurt, yes, but what's the alternative? Am I gonna close myself and die already now before this body is dead? No, I'm gonna keep opening. And that hurts, it hurts to be alive. And we all get hurt and we will lose, we will have grief when we lose each other, and we don't know when that is, And the more you open to love, you also open to loss. You're gonna lose the other person, whether it's because the other person has an affair and moves away, or death or illness. We don't know. There's no guarantees ever in life. And that's the beautiful thing about life, right? That we don't know. It's hanging in that unknown space. How to keep opening, even if it's scary, and unknown and uncertain.
I think the big river that separates people from being immature to mature is the willingness to embrace pain and fear. And honestly, we have a lot of people over the years where they're just not, they don't want to do that. They have this idea that life doesn't include dealing with fear and pain. And then there's some who are ready to cross the Rubicon, to cross that river. But that's a real conscious choice. So I think the biggest thing that separates people who are willing to be mature and those who are immature is exactly that.
And that comes back to, that's again the confidence to be with it. So
right.
if the person understands, so even just the new framing of understanding that it makes sense to begin to be with pain, then there's a foundation where we can start to build that container, and then it becomes possible to open into life and not give up on a conscious relating, if that's what the person would like. But we need to build that confidence that, no matter what happens. And then also the painful thing is that often with life experiences, if we haven't matured through them, is that we may have lost touch with our intuition, because you mentioned about toxic relationships. So the painful thing is if we've had a real break in trust with life, where we feel like life is against me, or I'm being punished, and then we even lose touch with our intuition. And that's the most painful thing, how to find back our trust in life and in our intuition. That's a trial and error.
It's a journey, yeah.
Maybe you come close to a person and maybe it isn't safe, and then you discover that, and that's okay, but that's how we learn, that's how we grow, that's how we mature.
And it's interesting because sometimes people decide to close their hearts because of the fear of pain, that not crossing the river, yeah. But also staying in that side of the river is a little bit like in death in life, yeah. It's sometimes even more painful, but sometimes comfortable, or I don't know.
Right, especially because if we're so used to living in that closed state, we may have gotten numb to the pain, so we may not feel that we're in pain. We're very focused on our work, our hobbies, our friends, our addictions, and we've created like a kind of a defense around us. And maybe we're getting nourished by some of those things, which is wonderful, but we may not realize that on a deeper level, we're not really opening.
And that creates a certain hollowness in a life, or bitterness, when people are not really willing to face life with its pluses and minuses. Of hollowness, the famous poem, "We Are the Hollow Men." It's there's a sense of, yeah, something missing.
And then later in life, often, people later in life start to feel, wow, what's the point of living? I don't feel any meaning, any joy, any motivation. And that's because of that deeper closing. It's not easy to connect with that, because that's really up to us and our relationship to life, to existence. That's much deeper than our connection in relationship to the other person. But that's something so deep and individual that we all have to connect to ourselves.
That was another of the questions that I had for you, is kind of how important is to have that connection to something bigger in terms of being able to really create a relationship that works.
I think that is important. I think it's, if people are inclined to have spirituality in their life, that's a deep bonding that we have with each other, because we actually met connected to a spiritual master. So we have this sense of meditation as being a foundation. But that's not everybody, it's not essential, but it certainly helps us to have that, that to deal with death, to deal with all these really difficult things with the benefit of meditation, of space. And we both had experiences where death is a fiction. And I think that, that helps to not, we've dealt with the fear, somewhat. I am not completely, for sure, but I think that helps. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, yeah, I also feel like we talked about commitment. I feel like in a way, the difference perhaps also is because we did meet in India in the ashram where we were both living at the time. Perhaps the difference is also that, like for me, I always felt that my commitment is to growth.
Mm.
The commitment is to the truth, no matter where that takes. So the commitment was never like to the relationship, if that makes sense. It was always to keep growing and to keep going deeper and to keep using all the challenges of life to grow. So of course that is different. When that is the commitment, then it's different.
Again, every couple is different. I mean, we've worked with so many couples over the years. And what we're interested in is not that there has to be certain things that are common ground, but what is the common ground between these two people? Can they see and live life together with enough, common ground to be willing to share,
because the common ground could be creating a family. I mean, there's different ways. It could be, being really engaged and seeing these amazing children, these beings growing up and having fun with that. I mean, there could be so many, or different projects, or, whatever it is,
Yeah. And resolve conflict. That's one thing we haven't talked about, but we also teach people how to resolve conflict without, blaming or attacking each other. And that's a big thing.
Yeah, because otherwise conflict will, if there are a lot of that without being able to manage that in a way that you can go back to love, that will finish killing the relationship. Yeah. What would be for someone listening to us that want to take that journey into really of growth into into relating intimately, what would be the key steps, though, the key three ingredients, 3 steps that you would, 3 tips that you would want to give?
Well, I would say, number one, realize that it's a very challenging growth process, that you have to be willing to work on yourself to understand what you bring to the table in terms of your expectations, your insecurities, your fears, and so on. I would say also about being transparent, being willing to share, take off your masks, and be willing to open, be willing to care for each other, and hold your own. I would say that would be pretty essential. And as you go along, be willing to process things together. And if you can't, then get help. Get help people who are doing it, you know.
And I would also say, like, forget about any kind of end result, any idea, you know, just moment to moment, you know, that courage to look at yourself, not think about relationship as something you have to grab or, you know, pin down, or like, you know, just moment to moment, and being willing to be with your fears as they come up, your insecurities, you know, being very sincere about that journey. You know, and then the willingness to look at yourself. And then for me, number two would be to, when you do get really triggered, like when the past really takes over and you can't see clearly and you really believe that the other person is the enemy, you know, and you close, I would say to take time, take space, go deeper, and start to question and see if you can use your creativity to look at it in a different light. How can you look at it in a new way? Like, are there other options that you could look at the same thing and realize that perhaps I'm looking at it through this prism of the past? And how could I look at it in a new way? I think that that's interesting, you know?
Also, look at your conditioning. Look at what you're carrying in terms of your belief system, and explore that, examine that, you know. A lot of times people don't do that, you know, or the need to be right. People have to look at their need to be right, you know, or their need to accept that the other person has to see things. They have to look at their defenses, and they have to look at their strategies, and that's not going to work.
And if you have that kind of attitude, if you have that intensity and you want something from the other person that they should see this, then you are missing being with the intensity of why this is so important to you. And then we need to look at, why is it so important to me that the other person sees this, you know, oh, and then I feel alone. If he or she doesn't see this, I feel alone. So then we have to be with the loneliness. So that's what we mean with the inner journey, finding space to be with the loneliness when the other person doesn't feel you, or is not as sensitive to you as you would like, or doesn't understand you. No.
And this is where the loneliness or the loneliness becomes very intense when you are in a relationship. Yeah.
Very intense, especially if you have beautiful moments of connection.
Yeah.
So moments of deep connection, and it's easy to be in this illusion that this will be forever because it feels so wonderful. Then when you have the misunderstanding or the conflict, it's like the contrast from that love flow, that love connection, to no love flow is very painful. Much more painful than if you're just alone without a relationship and you've gotten used to it, you know? Yeah.
Yes. So we've gone a little bit long in time, but I would love to finish with three short questions. Well, maybe. What is love for you?
Love for me is just this experience inside. It's just this experience of flow, of expansion. Just yeah.
In a way, everything is based on love. Everything that isn't love isn't really, I mean, yeah. But I think that in a relationship, at least for me, I think for both of us, I experience connection to love in our togetherness. I mean, I don't take it for granted. So for me, it's like every morning or all the time during the day, I feel the connection, and that brings me to the experience of love. You know, you can get lost in details and practical things and so on, but this kind of is a constant, coming back to center in a way, like a homing pigeon coming back to what really matters. So I think that's,
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it's I would say love for me is more like this interconnectedness, and then there's the joy of the sharing, the togetherness that then makes it more rich.
And what is freedom?
Good question. I mean, I think freedom is feeling like you're living the life that you're really meant to live and feel in your flow. You know, we don't want people to give up their flow to be in a relationship. We want it to enhance your flow. So we support each other's flow. We support each other's freedom. We sometimes say, be the guardian of the other person's freedom as well as your own, you know, so that both people can fly like a bird. There's no way that you want to pull somebody away from their freedom. That's not kind, you know.
Because I think for me, you know, freedom is choice. You know, choice to not just behave like a robot. Like freedom to feel the moment, feel the situation, feel the person, feel yourself. Have space to move with your inner connectedness, your flow, and not just being driven by some idea. You know, and that comes back to the other thing, you know, which I think the important thing is also not to, I mean, I think that's also something about growing and also growing together, is that quality of curiousness, like not getting stuck in judgment, whether about yourself or the other. Because it's either we're judging, like this is right, wrong, good, bad, or we're curious to understand more about yourself or more about the other. So I would say that's also freedom.
Yeah.
Curiosity, like curiosity to learn, to expand, and not just getting stuck in judgments.
It's about bringing more consciousness also, yeah, because what you said. And then this is the last one. Because they often, you know, people come with love of freedom. Like if they were like in conflict, like if they were in conflict, yeah. So I know you don't see it like that, but where do they meet? Yeah, how do you explain that?
Well, I think there's many different levels. I mean, you could go in that level and see love and freedom as a contradiction. If you let's imagine that, for instance, you have not really explored your sexuality a lot. It could be that as a teenager, perhaps you were very repressed and you couldn't live it freely, and it didn't have that natural progression where at a certain point you've kind of done that enough and you want to go to something different that's more connected and intimate. So it could be that you feel like, you know, if that's, maybe you would want to have many partners to explore and then feel free to do that. Or you could think that love means like in a committed relationship. So that might be one level of seeing the contradiction, right? And it could be that somebody says, look, I have not explored my sexuality. I want to just explore with lots of men or lots of women, and that's great, you know. I think that's really important to allow that and to maybe do lots of different, you know, tantra experiences and explore the sensuality and wake up the body, because there's so much repression, you know, so much religious repression and ideas and all that stuff. So it's so important to wake up the energy and feel what's really true moment to moment. And that could be, and then at a certain point, maybe as that matures, as you do that a lot and you don't hold yourself back, eventually it might be that at a certain point you long for a different kind of intimacy with one person, or not, you know, not to let that be another idea, you know, or maybe you just want to explore forever. Everybody's different.
Yeah, and sometimes it feels like once you are in a relationship, then there cannot be freedom or freedom disappears. Yeah, that like you go into a cage, but.
Yeah, and that is true if you think you have to fulfill and meet the other person's expectations. You think the other person should meet your expectations, both, right?
Yeah.
But it is tricky when let's say you're in a relationship, and let's say one partner would like to have other sexual partners and the other person is scared of that or is not interested in that or would like some more deep, then it is a problem. That is where the priorities are not the same. That's similar to what we talked about with the children.
Yeah.
If somebody wants children and the other doesn't, that's kind of a deal breaker. In the same, if somebody wants many sexual partners, but the other person doesn't, it's really not a good fit.
Yeah. And that's
You
it.
Not a good fit at this moment.
That's it.
But the problem is that people are so afraid of separating, even when they have differences that are as big as that, it creates problems. So a lot of our work with couples, sometimes we have to deal with that, where there's something really basically different that maybe they separate for a while, maybe they separate forever, you know. But to stay together and be fighting all the time, we don't consider that a great option.
And I see sometimes working with couples that often one tries to adapt to the other person's way, even if it's not true. And very often, not always in this way, but often it's the man who would like more partners, and often the woman would like a more sustained, deep intimacy. And many times maybe the woman will convince herself that it's okay and will think, okay, I should be okay with it, or maybe, you know, and then maybe even herself have other partners, but it may not be true and authentic, you know. So maybe you have to live that out and see, and at a certain point trust. And sometimes it's the other way around, sometimes it's a woman who wants, so it's not always in this way, you know.
Yes. Yeah, that's very typical case for deal breaker.
Yeah, and it's painful because you have to
Yeah.
face the aloneness.
Mm.
Very painful.
So I think I have many more questions, but we've been going for quite a while, so let's leave it here. I just would love to say before we close that you both coming to Europe this summer and will be offering seminars in Italy mainly, in Germany,
Yeah, yeah.
and the men's group that we're
And
doing
in
together,
June
Krish
in
in
Spain.
Spain. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, in
Yes.
June, yes.
So yeah, and so I recommend that people that might be interested to do work with you to look at your website. I will be posting your website under this interview.
Yes.
And
Also in the website, they can sign up for the newsletter if they would like to get information. We also do a very beautiful seminar at the end of the year, always in Bali. I mean, not always. We will do it this year. We don't know about continuing, but for now we do it this year. That's another option, and actually very beautiful for both couples or individuals, because we have a long time together.
Also to support your work, and also you're learning our work, and you're going to be doing that work in Spain, which is beautiful because
Yeah. And that you're starting to integrate also the learning love work with
the Tantra work, which is fantastic.
yes, that's already happening. Yeah.
Your seminars, and because they could be such a new thing, you know, to combine this work with your tantric work is really not happening. So you'll be the new one, the first one, the vanguard.
It just happened by itself, because I mean my life experience was that first of all I started with Tantra, and that brought a lot of transformation within me. But then there was a point where I got stuck again, and it was like, okay, I've transformed this, but I still hitting myself against the wall in relationship. And it was very painful because I couldn't understand. I've done so much work, and and then this work really helped. But it was also that couples that were coming to me for Tantra, thinking that the Tantra could help with all this sort of difficulties they were having. And obviously sometimes it did help, but many of the times Tantra was not the answer to what the difficulties. And then I started sharing very like a little bit shy, because I thought, no, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready. But then I will give a few tips, and people were really grateful. Wow, this really helped. So then I started a little bit more and more, and then I'm now creating programs that combine a little bit of both as much as I can, because obviously the Tantra work is stronger and I feel more secure, and I've done much more work with that. But yes, what I'm offering people really always very grateful that they feel they get a lot from that. Yeah, a lot of clarity, a lot of understanding, a lot of hope. Like the see light at the end of the tunnel of suffering in relationship. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I recommend people that are listening to check your website, my website also, and yes. And also, just to say it again, Krish and I are organizing a group for men in Spain this year, and they're still in June, and there are still some spaces.
Right.
That's
Great.
great.
Thank
you so much for-
thank you so much. Thank you for your wisdom and your experience sharing.
Thank you so much for
Yes, for
suggesting
you
this
being
interview.
you. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Adios.